Hey guys, it's Libby. I've got some new books. Let's film a book haul. So I have these books grouped into 3 categories based on when and how I acquired them. The first category only has 1 book, and it is the only book I have paid for so far this year, I think, and it was only €2.50. You've seen it before. It is the teeny tiny Notes on Camp by Susan Sontag, which also contains the essay, I keep forgetting what it's called, One Culture and the New Sensibility. This is number 29 in the Penguin Modern series, which is a collection of little short fiction and nonfiction tastes. And I picked this up in the Nieuwekerk, which is right next to where I live. It's a deconsecrated church, and it's now a museum, which mainly does like modern art. And so I didn't actually see the exhibit that was associated with this, but I guess there was one. I talked about this in one of my recent wrap-ups. Maybe it was July, maybe it was June. I'll link that down below if you want to hear more about this. But for now, I will, of course, read you the first sentence of at least the first essay, Notes on Camp, and that is, "Many things in the world have not been named, and many things, even if they have been named, have never been described." The next group of books that I have are books that I have acquired from a beach house that my family rented in Bethany Beach. Every year, me and my parents and my brothers and their ever-increasing families pile in to a house in Bethany Beach, Delaware. So lots of different families are in it over the course of the summer, and a lot of times people will like buy a book to read at the beach, and they read it and then they just leave it at the house. So it's kind of a take a penny, leave a penny situation, and this year I took many pennies. The first one is one that I have read before. I read it in 10th grade for class, and I think I must have gotten rid of it based on horrible memories of my 10th grade English class, but it is Snow Falling on Cedars by David Guterson. I do think it is actually a good book, despite the environment I was in when I read it. This is set on a small island in Puget Sound, which is off of Washington State in the 1950s, and it's focused around the trial of a Japanese-American man for the murder of a white American man. And there's all these flashbacks to the 30s and 40s dealing with the Japanese internment. The first sentence is, "The accused man, Kazuo Miyamoto, sat proudly upright with a rigid grace, his palms placed softly on the defendant's table, the posture of a man who has detached himself, insofar as this is possible, at his own trial." And then I think everything else on this list is a new-to-me book. The first one is The Complete Short Stories of Flannery O'Connor. It's slightly dirty, but, you know, it was free. Oh, someone who had this book before me wrote something in it. What'd they say? "Geez, that's awesome. I'm done, but Natalia had a lot too. But it's okay. I can get them from Colleen. You only have 2 with you." Drama. If anyone has friends named Natalia and Colleen and used to own a copy of Flannery O'Connor's short stories, hello. Thank you. So Flannery O'Connor was a writer of Southern Gothic in the mid-20th century, and I used to think that I did not like Southern Gothic, but I'm pretty sure that I just don't like To Kill a Mockingbird, because I have since read We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson, and it was very yes. So I'm willing to do more experiments in Southern Gothic. This collection arranges her stories chronologically, and interestingly, her final story, Judgment Day, is kind of a rewrite to the first story in this collection, The Geranium. So we get to see how her writing evolves and develops, and then we finally get the perfect comparison between her early work and her late work. So the first sentence of The Geranium is, "Old Dudley folded into the chair he was gradually molding to his own shape, and looked out the window 15 feet away into another window framed by blackened red brick." The next 2 books I got are both by Toni Morrison. This is a rather American collection of books that I got. Yeah, normally I read a lot more European stuff, but I guess it makes sense if I'm picking up books pre-selected for me by presumably Americans. More of it is going to be American. So this is Jazz and Beloved. And Beloved, I know, I think it's considered her most famous work, and it is about slavery and its aftermath. The main character had escaped slavery, and now she's living in Ohio after the Civil War, but of course she's still processing all of this. And then Jazz, I have no idea what this is about, except that it's by Toni Morrison, and, you know, presumably someone plays some jazz at some point. Does the back want to tell me anything? Jazz is the story of a triangle of passion, jealousy, murder, and redemption, of sex and spirituality, of slavery and liberation, of country and city, of being male and female, African American, and above all, of being human. Like the music of its title, it is a dazzlingly lyric play on elemental themes, as soaring and daring as a Charlie Parker solo, as heartbreakingly powerful as the blues. It is Pulitzer Prize-winning novelist Toni Morrison at her best. Well, that didn't actually tell me anything about the story, but you know, it's Toni. It's gonna be good. I find it interesting that on the front, they said she's the winner of the Nobel Prize, but on the back it lists her as Pulitzer Prize-winning novelist Toni Morrison, which, like, the Nobel is more prestigious than the Pulitzer, right? Don't you want to put that one on the back? I don't know. So the first sentence of Beloved. 124 was spiteful, but this may say I-24 was spiteful. This is in a text where the ones and the I's are interchangeable. Oh, someone else has written in this one as well. Oh, mainly underlining things and writing the letter C. Used books, man. Does anyone write in jazz? No, I have an unblemished jazz. Okay, the first sentence is, I know that woman. And then the last book that I picked up from the Bethany House is still set in the Americas, but this time it's South America. It is Bel Canto by Ann Patchett. I don't know very much about this one either, but it won the Orange Prize, now known as the Women's Prize, and I've heard other people say good things about it. It has something to do with like an opera singer or a concert singer who is performing at the birthday party for a very high-ranking Japanese businessman that is being thrown by some member of the government of, I believe, an unidentified South American country when, like, terrorists break in and take everyone hostage. And it's about the interaction between the party guests and the terrorists and the party guests and each other. And yeah, sounds interesting. Oh, that's nice. They put the chapter titles in staves. So the first sentence is, when the lights went off, the accompanist kissed her. So those are the books that I acquired for myself when I was in America, and then when I came back, I found that my sweetie, David, had bought me some books. So these are they. These are all ones that I had on my wish list, so there weren't any super surprises that I won't know what to say about in this video, fortunately for you. Okay, so the first one is The Strange and Beautiful Sorrows of Ava Lavender by Leslye Walton. This seemed to be sort of at the forefront of this new movement of like YA magical realism, which I believe is currently being headed by Anna Marie McLemore. And yes, I am intrigued in this world. I've read one sort of classic work of magical realism. It was a novella by Gabriel Garcia Marquez, possibly the most famous magical realist. But this was Chronicle of a Death Foretold. And I read it, and yeah, it was interesting, but I'm not sure that I got it. Maybe I will have more luck here. This is about a girl, Ava Lavender, who is born with wings, and I believe that this is a thing that happens frequently in her family. At least we know, we also get significant portions of the story dedicated to her mother and her grandmother. So yeah, that's all I know about this book. The first sentence is, my maternal grandmother, Emilienne Adu Solange Roux, fell in love 3 times before the eve of her 19th birthday. Then we have a book that you guys do not need me to tell you about. It is The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. And although I have seen this book discussed on many booktube channels, I don't think I've ever seen this edition. Is this like the new UK hardcover? Maybe this is the old UK hardcover and I've just only been seeing American editions. So yeah, Name of the Wind, big epic fantasy story. It's about Kvothe telling his life story. I am glad to have this book, although I will not be reading it anytime soon. I know I've seen people be very upset about how the 3rd book is not out, and so I do not want to get myself invested. I don't need to wait until the 3rd book is actually out. I just want to have a very firm release date to be confident in before I start this and the 2nd book. The first sentence. How long is this? It's under 700 pages. Okay, I feel like people talk about how it's the longest thing in history. The print is kind of small here. Okay, so we'll start with the prologue. It was night again. Okay, now we're moving into some proper British fare, as I am used to. So here we have The Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro. It's in the 1950s about a butler in a big fancy house who is sort of coming to the end of his career, and he's, I'm sure, reflecting on his life and how, like, his way of life is not really going to continue beyond him as we move into the 20th century. The first sentence is, "It seems increasingly likely that I really will undertake the expedition that has been preoccupying my imagination now for some days." Next up, another book that will probably be pretty familiar to most of you guys watching. It is North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell. The first sentence, what is it? This is a Penguin classic, so there's a bunch of extra stuff at the beginning, which is good for reading, but less good for finding the first sentence. Okay, the first sentence is Edith, and then next we have A Month in the Country. This is the novella by J.L. Carr, not to be confused with the play by Ivan Turgenev, which is in Russian, but one of the English titles that it is given when it is published in English is A Month in the Country. This isn't that. This was written in, I believe, the 1970s, but it's set in the 1920s, and it's about a man who had been in World War I and is dealing with some trauma from that, and so he goes to spend a month in the country, and I think he, like, restores paintings in a medieval church. Sounds nice. Oh, this is also a Penguin modern classic, and the next one is also a Penguin modern classic. Man, they are getting a lot of money out of me. The first sentence is, "When the train stopped, I stumbled out, nudging and kicking the kit bag before me." And that next Penguin modern classic that I mentioned is, of course, Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin. I read Morris a couple of months ago, and now I want, like, all of the 20th century queer fiction. I'm way more interested in, like, classic queer fiction, which is mainly, like, 20th century and not really that much earlier, unless you want to start getting into, like, subtext. Yeah, I'm more interested in that than in modern queer fiction. But this is set in the 1950s in Paris, and our hero is a young American named David who's over there, and he meets an Italian named Giovanni, and I guess they hit it off and go to Giovanni's room. Unlike Morris, though, I'm pretty sure that this one is a sad. Okay, the first sentence is, "I stand at the window of this great house in the south of France as night falls, the night which is leading me to the most terrible morning of my life." That's a good opening sentence, guys. And finally, the last one, or rather the last three, if you take it that way, is the Corfu Trilogy by Gerald Durrell. This is a set of 3 different memoirs by Gerald Durrell. I believe there's currently a TV series called The Durrells, which is about this family. So what's going on is, I believe we're in Britain in the 1930s, and we've got a family with 4 kids and a single mother, and you know, it's wet and rainy, miserable, and one day one of the kids is like, what if we just, like, moved to Greece? And so then they do, and they move to the island of Corfu, and it's this is what Gerald remembers of his time there. And Gerald it was very interested in, like, zoology and biology, and whatever the insect one is, ornithology, I think that's birds. The 3 different novels are My Family and Other Animals, Birds, Beasts and Relatives, and The Garden of the Gods. And since there are 3 different books, I will read you 3 different first sentences in trust that they will not be spoilers, because it's nonfiction. So the first sentence of My Family and Other Animals is, "July had been blown out like a candle by a biting wind that ushered in a leaden August sky." First sentence of Birds, Beasts, and Relatives is, "It had been a hard winter, and even when spring was supposed to have taken over, the crocuses, which seemed to have a touching and unshaken faith in the seasons, were having to push their way grimly through a thin crust of snow." And the first sentence of The Garden of the Gods is, "That summer was a particularly rich one. It seemed as if the sun had drawn up a special bounty from the island, for never had we had such an abundance of fruit and flowers. Never had the sea been so warm and filled with fish. Never had so many birds reared their young, or butterflies and other insects hatched and shimmered across the countryside." This kid likes to talk about the weather. Whew, so that's all of the books we got through. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm starting to lose my voice. How many was that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, or 15, depending on how we're counting the Corfu Trilogy. Yeah, now I have to go find space for all of these on my bookshelf. Wish me luck, and thanks for watching.